I want to welcome everyone here this morning. Thank you for joining us for this press conference. Very grateful to Senator Patrick and Governor Dewhurst for being with us this morning. One of the most daunting issues confronting Texas is our continued struggle to find the best ways to educate our children. Try as we might, we still confront issues of funding equity, fairness, and accountability in our public system. Today we welcome Senator Patrick and Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, who are going to unveil proposals for reforming the education system in Texas, including an effort to improve school choices for working class families. The Texas Catholic bishops believe that parents have a right and responsibility to educate their children. They should also have the right to choose the best school for them. School choice is important to the Catholic Church, largely because we see it as an issue of equity and justice for families who want and should have the opportunity to make the best choices for their children. School choice does not represent a judgment against our public school system or its teachers. It merely recognizes that in Texas, a family's educational choices are limited by their economic means. We see this in San Antonio, where the Hope for the Future scholarship program awards $1.5 million in student scholarships each year, yet still has a waiting list of over 800 families in need of scholarships to attend Catholic schools. In evaluating school reform measures, the Texas Catholic Conference will continue to focus on three critical issues, on three criteria. That reforms do not unduly burden public schools, that schools are required to comply with recognized standards for accreditation and accountability, and that the reforms are means-tested and target working class families. Texas Catholic bishops believe that parents have a right and responsibility to educate their children. They should also have a right to choose the best school for them. Our preference continues to be for a creation of a school choice tax credit. Texas corporations and insurance companies would receive a state tax credit for contributing to nonprofits that award scholarships to students demonstrating financial or academic need. Students can then use these scholarships to attend accredited private schools. A tax credit scholarship program is a community-focused effort that provides choices for everyone in the process. Corporations can choose nonprofit scholarship agencies that demonstrate proven success. The scholarship agencies can make decisions that best meet community needs, and families can apply for scholarships that are in the best interest of their children. I would like to welcome Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst to share more about the proposals. We've been grateful to Governor Dewhurst for his past efforts in fighting for life and for Texas families. We look forward to the opportunity to work closely together to ensure that school choice legislation improves educational options for working class families. Governor Dewhurst.
Bishop Cantu, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Bishop Cantu, thank you very much for your leadership. Thank you to the Catholic bishops for all of your leadership. Thank you to the Catholic Church for your leadership in this area. We're all here today with my friend Senator Patrick to discuss an issue that's so important to the state of Texas. It is the key to open the door for opportunity for all young Texans. You know, everyone here today understands that our most precious resource in Texas are our children. That was certainly shown last Friday, in which the tragedy in Connecticut scared every parent. I mean, we've got a 9-year-old, and I was concerned. I want to go to her school that afternoon and just give her a hug, and I was hundreds of miles away. But we're going to do everything we can in the state of Texas to make sure that our precious children are protected. There's nothing I won't do. Nothing I won't do to make sure that our children are safe. Currently, our law here in the state of Texas requires school districts to adopt emergency plans that include employee training and mandatory school drills that'll prepare both students and teachers to respond to emergencies. In addition, under state law, school districts have to perform a security audit every 3 years to ensure that their plan is up to date. According to the Texas School Safety Center at the Texas State University, 78 independent school districts are out of compliance. That's unacceptable. The legislature will consider this year a law that will add penalties for schools that are out of compliance and possibly give the Texas School Safety Center specific authority to enforce compliance. Our children are the future of the state of Texas. And when it comes to getting a great education, whether it's our public schools or charter schools or private schools, I am dedicated to achieving that goal. And Senator Patrick is dedicated towards achieving that goal. I want to make sure, we want to make sure that every student in the state of Texas has the opportunity to receive a great public school education in every district, in every part of the state. This session, in addition to protecting our children, the Senate, as I mentioned earlier, is going to address comprehensive public education reform, including testing, accountability by making sure our accountability standards remain high, increasing the number of charter schools, school choice, so parents have more, Bishop Cantu, more opportunity to make a choice on where their children go to school, and online learning. We want to make sure that our public schools stay strong and viable. Now, Senator Patrick and I know how parents feel about testing. If we've heard once, we've heard 100 times, teaching to the test, and that's what we want to avoid. Today's system, with your two different scoring systems, quite frankly, is confusing to educators, parents, and students. But again, we want to insist on strong accountability in our schools in both coursework and testing. However, I think there's room for improvement. Last month, Senator Williams and I sent a letter to the TEA Commissioner, Michael Williams, and we asked him to delay implementing the requirement that 15% of a student's final grade depend on their performance in the STAR end of course examinations. Senator Patrick has already filed a bill that I have looked at with him, Senate Bill 135, that'll make the 15% requirement a local option up to the independent school districts. We're currently reviewing the number of end of course examinations that should be the right number. And to me, that right number is south of 15. So we're going to be spending a lot of time working with the stakeholders, with our business community. I see Bill Hammond is here, the president of the Texas Association of Businesses. We'll be working with our stakeholders, educators, our businesses to make sure that we come up with the right standards so that our workforce is well trained. I also believe in more career and technical education course options, and Senator Patrick agrees. So that our students who want to be career ready rather than college ready have an ability and a course in order to graduate. Again, Bishop Cantu was talking about hardworking families who may not have that option independently to be able to choose a private school. We want to make sure that everyone in Texas, I'm a product of our public schools. I've been dedicated since day one when I came into the legislature to make sure that our public schools are improved and everyone has a fair chance to receive a great education. Interestingly, Senator Patrick in the legislation is going to propose letter grades on our schools, not the current 4 designations, but letter grades, so that parents and students will know how their school is doing. If a school earns an A, the parents and teachers ought to know that. If a school earns an F, the parents and teachers ought to know that. There's no question that our children deserve the very best education possible. And we need to make it easy for their parents to determine the destiny of their children. Having a choice means giving children a chance. Having a choice means giving children a chance. There's no question that choice spurs competition because it's free market oriented. It empowers parents to choose where their son or daughter is going to be educated. School choice doesn't hurt our public schools. I can remember individually watching Edgewood Independent School in the early 1990s because of competition. To the credit of Edgewood Independent School District and their board and their teachers, they raised the quality of their education and became a recognized independent school district. So choice makes school districts, public schools, stronger. And I'd like to see more choice. That includes easier transfers to other well-performing public schools. If a child is in a failing school system, currently there are 531 campuses which are academically unacceptable. That represents 315,000 young students. That's unacceptable. So we want to make it easier. If a campus is failing, we want to make sure that that child is not stuck in that campus under current Texas law, which says you can't reform the school for 6 years. That's crazy. We need to shorten that time period. So to facilitate transfers to well-performing independent school districts, and more charter school options. Yes, tax credits on our business tax, Bishop, and triggers that after 2 years, 3 years, whatever we decide, that if a school is not turning itself around, the parents have a right to make a vote and change that school. We need to raise the cap on charters and close down low-performing charter schools. Now, while various reforms are being discussed, the ultimate goal is to improve our public education system. And in summary, as your Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to continue to do everything I can to improve our public schools, because our public schools and school choice is the key to unlocking the door of opportunity for all children. Our future, the future of Texas, is being forged in our classrooms every day, and we need to make sure that our children are graduating with all the opportunity to live the American dream. I want to thank Senator Patrick for all the hard work he has been doing on public education reform. We are getting a tsunami almost daily from emails from him at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. This man is working hard. I am delighted to partner with you, Dan. Senator Dan Patrick.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Bishop, for hosting. I think the fact that the Lieutenant Governor and myself are standing here today shows the commitment we have together to reform our schools and make them better than they already are. Get out of the way of our successful schools and let them be successful, but where we have failing schools and students in need, we need to help those students. Someone said to me, well, Dan, why is reform important now? Because reform is never finished and success is never final. We live in a day and time where, because of technology, our lives change so fast. The business demands change so fast on what our high school graduates need to go on to career or on to college. So we must keep pace, and that's why we will always be striving to make our schools better and create more choice for parents and students. Here's a simple way for you to remember our broad-based, very comprehensive, sweeping legislation, ACCT, and that's accountability, choice, charters, career, and technology. Those are the 5 points. And I know we get a lot of attention on the choice issue, and I'm going to address that in detail. But every element is important to provide a skilled workforce for the future, to give opportunities for university, if that's where students want to go, to a 4-year university or a 2-year community college. We want to create pathways to make sure our students are successful. The American dream is built around a good job. and a good job is built around a great education. Now let me talk about the A, the accountability. First of all, I want to give school districts more choice. This is about choice for school districts, parents, superintendents, everyone to be creative, bring about new ideas, and to succeed. Number one in accountability, we're going to look at, as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, our STAR test. We're going to look at the number of tests, but not based on a number of tests, but on the rationale behind why those tests are given and what tests need to be taken to accomplish the goals I talked about of being college and career ready. Number two, as Lieutenant Governor said, we have already sent a letter to the Commissioner of Education to postpone the 15% this year. My legislation will make that a school choice. I also want to end, our legislation will include ending cumulative scoring. Right now you could get a minimum score on each test and still fail the cumulative scoring. So we're going to change that aspect of it. On accountability, I want to give school districts the ability, give them a 5-day automatic waiver to begin school when they want. Some schools would like to start several days sooner than other schools to get students in the classroom, get the books distributed so they're ready for class on the first official day. So we want to give them that opportunity. We want to give school districts the option of easily becoming a home rule charter. So if they want to designate one school in their district a charter, or their entire district, particularly for smaller districts, a charter district, they're able to do so with a simple vote of the school board. So on accountability, we want to be sure that our schools are meeting the demands that we as citizens and parents expect our schools to meet, but we want to give them the flexibility to do so. Let's talk about choice. If I were to offer a bill that said you're not allowed to send your child to private school, even if you can pay for it, it wouldn't get one vote. Wouldn't get one vote, Governor. No one would deny a parent the right to send their children to a private school, this Catholic school, if they could pay for it. And if I passed a bill or offered a bill that said you're not allowed to move, to be mobile, to go to a school district you think is a better school district, you can't do that. You have to stay where you are. People would laugh at that and say, we can't support that. We can get one vote. So why do we then say to that parent, very often a single working mom who doesn't have the money for a private school, who takes the bus to work every day and can't move to the suburbs because she'd lose her job, why do we say to that parent, I'm sorry, you're not wealthy and you don't have wheels, so you don't have any choice? We need to create choice for those students, and here are the 4 choices that we need to offer. 1, go to any public school in your district. Some districts allow that, some districts make it difficult. Any school that has capacity. That will create competition within that district. Number 2, go to any school in any district you want. You don't have to go in your district to a school. If there's capacity in a new school, you can go there. When I was out in West Texas, and I've talked to over 100 superintendents in the last couple of months, teachers, educators, parents, business leaders, one of the things I discovered in rural Texas, they already allow this. They have students crossing district lines. Why? Because particularly in rural Texas, some schools offer courses and classes that other schools do not in some cases, or parents believe this school might be a better school. That creates competition. So any school in your district, public school, any school in any district if there's capacity. 3, the taxpayer saving credit that the bishop talked about. We're going to allow businesses to deduct up to 25% of what they would pay on the franchise tax, or if they pay the insurance premium tax. And that money will go to a nonprofit to be distributed to families based on need. And we'll determine that number at a later date, but it will be students that are in need. And those scholarships and that nonprofit will have the responsibility to verify those families are in need, and will verify that the schools where the scholarship is being applied to are accredited private schools. By doing this, we are going to give an opportunity to parents in need, an opportunity to get a scholarship if they so choose to send their child to that private school. We're going to set a cap on that number, which we are still working through, because we're going to continue to work on this every day to get the legislation right when we file it. But there will be a cap that we can apply to our private schools, and we're also going to allow public schools to apply for grants, 20% of that scholarship money for pre-K and after-school programs, so they can participate as well. The nonprofit will have to meet a very high standard with very low overhead to administer the scholarship. It's going to be their responsibility to make sure the students are the students in need in the schools or the private schools that are accredited schools in our state. The last choice, and it could be in any order, would be to lift the cap on charters. Let me give you some numbers that you need to get your arms around. We have nearly 5 million students in Texas in public schools. We only have 135,000 in charters, 235,000 in private schools, and about 300,000 students are homeschooled. So you're always going to have, and this is why the Lieutenant Governor and I are going to stand behind public education, because 80 to 85% or more of all students in Texas will be going to public schools. But a lot of folks are confused. Charter schools are public schools. They're not your traditional public schools, but they're public schools, and we need to lift the cap. We need to close down the bad public schools, as the Lieutenant Governor said, with a parent trigger or the commissioner coming in a recovery school district to take over poor-performing schools, not after 6 years, as the current law says, but after 2 years. If you're an F-rated school after 2 years, you need to be closed down.
Amen.
You know, someone said to me, well, Dan, but we need time to turn these schools around. That's okay, Michelle, I'm fine. We need time to turn these schools around. Look, we don't have time for evolution in our public schools. We need a revolution. Because when you say to that student, we need 4 years, if you're in the 8th grade, that means we're not going to fix it till you graduate. And you may have dropped out by then. It is immoral to say to any student or any parent, you must go to a poor-performing school because that's your zip code.
You know, 315,000 kids trapped in
Poor-performing schools. How do we say to that child, we expect you to graduate with high honors, but you have to go to a school that's a failure? It's just not, as the Lieutenant Governor said, it's not acceptable. So the 4 choices: any school in your district that has capacity, any school in any district that has capacity, apply for a scholarship if you're a student of need, and 4, open up the cap on charters. We want to broaden the charters, and that's why I said earlier that public schools can become their own charters, because sometimes superintendents say, well, Dan, if I could operate like a charter, well, we're going to let you. If you want to extend the school day, extend the school day. If you want to have class on Saturdays, your call. If you want to start a few days earlier, your call. We want public schools to have the flexibility to be successful. Then quickly, career. I mentioned career. It's very important that we lift up our CTE programs. 50% of the jobs in America require some type of training after high school, but only 30% require a 4-year degree. Now, we want everyone to go on to get the highest level of education they can, but not everyone is going to get a 4-year degree. In fact, the Houston Endowment did a study that only 21% of all 8th graders in Texas today go on to do something in education beyond high school. That's not acceptable. And only 10% of our minority population. When 50% of jobs require some type of after high school training or education, we only have 20% doing that. So we want to lift up career courses. I've already sent a letter to the State Board of Education to double the number and add more approved courses for graduation. I want to move from our 3-degree program. Right now we have minimum, recommended, and distinguished. We are going to have in our legislation for 1 degree. For now, we're calling it the Texas Foundation degree, but I'm sure someone will find a better name and amend it on the floor. But it'll be 1 degree where everyone takes the same number of STAR tests, but you will have a degree with an endorsement career or administration, depending on the courses you take, or academic, or distinguished, or STEM, or humanities. So we're going to create flexibility in the 4x4, more choice for students, particularly those focused on career. We need to lift up our skilled workforce, and that's what the business community has said to me. And lastly, in technology, our bill is going to call for the commissioner to do a study of our infrastructure in the state. All of our schools, to my knowledge, are wired to the internet, at least to send reports back and forth to the TEA. But we're not positive that every school, and there may be a few outliers who aren't wired somewhere out in the country, but almost everyone is wired up for basic internet. But do they have the capability to deliver online learning? Because we want to encourage, and our legislation will include, to encourage our best teachers and our universities to create courses that can be taught in high school. Not every school has a top-notch math teacher or science teacher or maybe a specific language. We need to present that and provide that online. And blended learning, by the way, is a wonderful way to do this, where the teacher acts as a proctor and the students are taking that course online while she's in the classroom, and the teacher knows who she can work with, who needs help, who doesn't need help, It's a great way. We need to take advantage of our best teachers. If we have our best math teacher of the year, we recognize the best math teacher of the year, why shouldn't that teacher be available to every student in every school if a student wants to take an online course? So, the broad-based reform package, ACCT, accountability, career, choice, charters, and technology. And I'm hopeful that all members of the legislature will join together. This is not a partisan issue. This is a moral issue to give students an opportunity to have the American Texas dream by giving them the best choices that they can find for their education. With that, we'll open up for questions.
Well said.
Thank you.
Questions?
Governor, what about allowing teachers with CHLs the opportunity to carry in schools?
I've always been a strong supporter of the Second Amendment's right for Texas law-abiding citizens to be able to carry guns. But this is an issue we're going to have to look at very, very carefully. Obviously, we've seen increased evidence of violence in our schools. The tragedy in Connecticut last Friday was just one example of way too many. And I'm going to want to work with Senator Patrick and our other senators. We're going to work with them to look at whether or not our program with our school police or some other program, including a marshal, would be more effective. But we're going to look at it.
Opponents to the voucher system say that they could not support anything that takes away further resources from public schools. Does this take away resources technically?
No, it doesn't take any money away. There's no fiscal note to the bill because a student who gets a scholarship won't be in the public school system, so the expense will not be needed for that student. So this does not take money from public education. School districts will still get the same amount of money they would receive today based on whatever the formulas are that given year that they would receive. And if students leave and take these scholarships, so that's one less student that they have to educate. And remember, even these businesses who take this tax credit are still paying school property taxes, which still go to the schools.
But aren't you drawing down the business tax?
We're creating a deduction. It is not going to impact school funding.
Any ballpark estimates on what you're looking at as far as tax credits?
I think one of the things that we have to do it, because this is, again, I was talking in concepts. Senator Patrick has gone into a lot more specificity. And as you all know, with 181 members, plus me, 182, plus the governor, 183, we're going to have a lot of input on this. And so there's a lot of work to do, not only with 183 of us, but with all of our stakeholders, our teachers, our administrators, our parents, our business community, our religious organizations, our charitable organizations. So Terry, there's a lot of work to be done on the numbers. It may end up that this is a pilot program in order to get kicked off. I would expect that whether we put the program in place or we start off with a relatively small pilot program, it will be successful. In fact, I know it will be. And it'll demonstrate that we're not taking funds away. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we've talked about is leaving some of those funds on a student that gets a scholarship in that independent public school so that actually they're getting increased funding for the number of students in that school so they can start the process to turn themselves around and improve their teachers.
But there will be less money going into the general fund, so there'll be less revenue available for other government services.
Gary, that's absolutely true, and that's why, although we haven't worked out the details, we're going to be looking very, very hard at not only our budget process this next year, but we're also going to be looking at our forecast for our economic growth and make sure that that doesn't step on our budget.
Can you give any range, what it might look like as far as dollars?
Well, and we're working all through that, Gary, but at the end of the day, whether it was a $50 million program or a $100 million program, it's in a $91 billion budget. It is life-changing money for those families. Let's not lose sight of the goal of the mission. And that is to make sure that students in poverty, in poor performing schools, have the same right as every other Texas family. That's the key. And it's not taking money away from public schools. And we're going to give, look, we have the 135,000 people in charter schools. We have 100,000 people, we think, now on the wait list. These are families in need. And what do our successful charter schools prove, Governor? What does KIPP and IDEA and YES, what do they prove? That poor students can do extremely well in the right environment. We want to give more of those students that opportunity. As the bishop said, they have their own scholarship program in San Antonio, and they have 800 students on the wait list. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you don't dream for your children. That's what we're focused on.
Gary, let me go back and let me answer your questions. In the early 1990s, in one school district, and I mentioned it before, and I'm complimenting it because it's done a big turnaround, but I think a district that you're familiar with, Edgewood Independent School District in the San Antonio area, had a lot of problems. And I got involved with an organization that was reaching in their blue jeans and writing a check each year for some scholarship. And I sent in for a number of years, X amount of dollars for 5 students. And I'd visit these children, and they were so happy to get out of gang-infested schools. But when Edgewood Independent School District turned themselves around, fair is fair. I went over and spent a day of my life to compliment them for their work. Competition works. And at the same time, we've got to put our children first. Yeah, we've got to be sensitive to our teachers, our educators. We've got to put children first.
Can we take one more, please?
Senator, are you going to require school districts to accept students from neighboring districts, even if they're against it? Is that going to be a requirement under your proposal?
Very interesting. Great question, Terry. There may be a provision where if there's a discipline problem that a school could decide not to accept. We're working through that. But basically, what does every school superintendent always say they want? More money. How do you get more money? By having more students. So when I've talked to certain superintendents, not to be named here, but off the record, they say, I welcome those students. If I have capacity. In fact, the ones who say, well, you know, one of the things our bill will require for them to post the capacity in all of their schools online. Some districts do that now. Some districts already allow, many of the things we're talking about are kind of spot here, spot there, different districts around the state. What I have done is take the best practices of school districts, listen to superintendents and educators and teachers in the business community, and as the governor said, everyone is on the same page that our students must graduate our high schools ready for career and college, and to do that we have to have competition, and we have to change the way that we're doing things now, and we must lift those 300,000 people out of poor performing schools. That's our
I'm dedicated, and I believe that I know that I'm dedicated. I know Senator Patrick's dedicated to continuing to improve our public schools.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I think there's no harm. As a matter of fact, it's a plus to be able to have more choice, have more charter schools, and the program that Bishop Cantu had laid out, a choice with tax credit dollars. We're gonna start off with a modest program because we want to show that it works first. And I don't believe this, it didn't work, then we wouldn't be continuing. But I know it will, because it's worked in private schools, it's worked in charter schools around the state. That's our goal. At the end of the day, because the vast majority of our students will be in public schools, how do we improve our public school system?
Absolutely.
And in those schools, those where we have 501, 502, 503 campuses which are academically unacceptable, and current law says you have to wait 6 years in order to shut them down, I can't permit that.
What kind of money do you want to put into this?
We're going to go next door, guys. If
Thank you all very much.
Cameras want to come through.